I figured my career was over and was just kind of winding down and thinking about other things in life, and then to have it come back and the way it did. I mean, it wasn't just the racing now. It was a way of life in a way. It was, and that's kind of what racing is. If you want to do it that way, it's a way of life for a while, you know. And you stick with it. You have to stick with it. You have to work hard at it. And they say it's the only thing, but winning isn't everything. It's whether you enjoy the sport or not. I always enjoyed being out there racing, driving. You know, it was always fun, you know. So that was glaring right in on my cheek, huh?
Yeah, it was only at the end though when the sun started peeking out.
Yeah. So should I finish any of that, or is it really hard to pick up where I was?
Yeah, it should be all right.
I've been involved with race cars since I was 10 years old. Before I did race cars, we were racing bicycles. You know, we used to race bicycles, you know, with the neighbors and stuff like that at school and things. You know, neighbors down the street from me, Doug Hartford. He was the older brother of Brian Hartford, and him and I just, you know, hung out a lot, and that's when I started getting involved with helping him and going down to Pine Speedway and Hudson Speedway, and we'd just, you know, go to the races. And I was 10 years old when I started doing that. And as time went on, school went on, went to high school and trade school, that was at Whittier Tech, and from there, that's when we, you know, I always wanted to, I was kind of wanted to be a free kind of guy. So back then you could get your learner's permit for driving a car, but you always had to have somebody riding with you. So I elected to get a motorcycle permit as well, so that I could be on my own right away. I took it for a ride around the city of Haverhill and ended up getting a flat tire. It was right down the street from a friend of mine, Vance Kelly, and I pushed it over to his house, and that's where I met Becky for the first time.
Sitting in the stands while Tom was racing, you know, I used to cross my fingers when he would roll out onto the track, and I would keep them crossed till he got off the track, because I felt like if I uncrossed him, he'd have some bad luck. So sitting in the stands, you just can't help but yell and scream, cheer him on. It's just so exciting. I could never sit there and not yell for him.
Basically, we started out with the street stocks, and with that, it was basically my wife and I. She wasn't my wife at the time, but you know, she followed me around. We went here and there. This is where I remember grabbing and getting a Mustang. I don't know, it was probably about a 68, 67, 68 Mustang, and took and gutted it all out, and a set of torches and a few hand tools, and then I had to, you know, put a roll bar in it, and I had some friends help me with, you know, doing some welding. I'd take it here and take it there, and down the street actually to Doug Hartford's house, and my teacher, Jimmy Legassi, he loaned me a trailer. My Uncle Frank Youngblood, he loaned me my first tow vehicle, which was one of his company trucks, and it was the one of the older ones of the fleet, but it managed. But Pine Speedway had closed by now, so but the new place to go to and big place to go was Star Speedway, and that was you know, only a 30-minute ride from Haverhill. So that was basically where I started. In Hudson Speedway in Hudson, New Hampshire, that was you know, another 30-minute ride. So between Star and Hudson, that's where I raced when I first started out in what they call the street stock division. the normal routine of getting up in the day, and you just have your breakfast and you hang out with your family a little bit in the morning, and then once the gates open up and you start heading into the pits, and you go manage your way back into the pit area in the morning, and you just mingle around. You say hi to people along the way, and then you just get together with your crew and you just kind of discuss what was going on. What things can we do to make improvements on the car for the day. Then you go out and you get your normal things of looking the car over, and we tried to go through every nut and bolt on the car, each day of when you start a day at the track, or before you even go to the races. That's what you would do. But if you had raced it the day before, say in a heat race or a practice the day before, then the next day, then you go through the whole thing as if was the following week. You just go through the whole car, make sure every nut and bolt is tight and nothing's broken under there that you don't see, wouldn't see until it was too late and put you out of a race or something like that.
Yeah, there's a lot of different things that you can do to adjust the cart, and some of the things it's just moving something a quarter of an inch, or changing where the weight is in the cart by just a little bit, is what makes it go fast. So there's a lot to learn from that respect.
Our son was very young when he showed interest in racing. Even, I would say maybe even 4 years old, 5 years old. He took it upon himself to record NASCAR races when they'd be on, and put in a VHS tape and record them when he was 4 or 5 years old.
Yeah, Scott really got into it. At the time, he was deeply involved with auto racing. He followed it, and today he's still following racing, and he's like an encyclopedia for me. If I have a question on something, Scott has always enjoyed racing. He's gone to every race at New Hampshire International Speedway since day one, when we first started going up there as a family with our motorhome. The first several years we went up there. We've had tickets in the same seats for forever.
Some of my earliest memories of my dad's racing, not so much the racing part of it, but my memories of the race cars, was I would love at the beginning of the season when they'd have the guy come and letter the car, and it used to be hand painting, all the numbers and all the sponsors and all that would get hand painted, and it would take hours, but I would love to sit there and just watch the car come to life. It's funny, when you think back to being 7 years old now and still having memories of sitting in a certain place and remembering watching my dad race that young. It's kind of cool to be able to still have those memories.
And then from the late models there, I moved on to, it was still late models again, but it was another team with the Bulldog team, and then with the 26 car, and then the Supers there again. Did the Supers, that was for a couple of years, then jumped in, was in doing the Supers and the Pro Stock at the same time with Billy Carr and Jimmy Driscoll. And it was a time at Hudson Speedway. They created a race called the Firecracker 10,000. It was a type of race where you had anywhere from a street stock to a mini stock to late model to, it was basically a run what you brung type of race, as long as you had a starter and a clutch. That was the rules. Like your super modifieds are direct drive, so they don't have a clutch, so they had to be pushed by a push truck to get started. That's how they would start. But for this particular race, Vic Miller they created a way to put a starter and a clutch on a super modified, and if I remember right, it had a hand lever for a clutch. It wasn't your typical clutch on the floor. They had to use a hand lever, and they were the only ones that did it, and there were actually a couple of NASCAR modifieds in this event as well, and you know they were the only ones that really gave any kind of a shot besides the Super to winning this thing. And in my case, I was in a late model sportsman still, and the super modified came up through and actually did take the lead again, but I think it was lap 11 or something like that, if I remember right, watching that video, that he ended up blowing his engine up and did it in kind of spectacular style with the fire and all that, and it was a pretty wild looking thing. The two modifieds that were out there was Kenny Bouchard and Dave Thomas, and that when the super modified blew its engine, that left them sitting up front, and I was in third. Restart of that, the two modifieds got together, and one was disabled, and because of the circumstances, the way it all happened, they disqualified the other for causing the wreck, and they threw him off the track, and that left me sitting there to be on the pole for the next restart. And from there we went on to win that race, and that was kind of one of the bigger paydays of my life. Got paid more money per mile in that particular race than the winner of the Indy 500 that year. So that's kind of funny when you think of it that way. A little quarter-mile track, and you get paid more per mile than somebody that ran the Indianapolis 500. So it's pretty interesting. But it came time for me to make a choice between the two, because I was driving both the super modified and the late model, the number 22 for Billy Carr, and and I did that for, I think it was just for a full season. Either continue doing super modified racing, or did I want to go the American Canadian Tour. So that was always exciting to me, to want to run around with the American Canadian Tour, and that's why I elected to go that route instead of going super modifieds. Super modifieds do a little bit of traveling, but with the American Canadian Tour, there was a schedule that every week you were at a different racetrack, somewhere in New England, New York, Canada. It was just that was appealing to me. I really enjoyed doing that. In order to do that, especially with having a family, it was had to have a place for us to stay. So we invested in a motor home, and that became our home for a couple of summers for the most part. I mean, we still got home in time, got home and had time at home, but for the most part, we would spend mostly Fridays to Sunday nights, or mostly a lot of Mondays would come home. And
it was fun to go off in the camper with the kids, and we did all enjoy it. We'd be in the camper probably 3 nights a week, and then just go back home and do it all again the next week.
I have some good memories of that. Even though I was so young, I still remember certain parts of that. I don't remember a lot, but there's certain things that I remember, and that was when we were really traveling around in the motorhome, and we'd go to Canada and we'd go to New York, and would be all over the region racing, and every weekend would be somewhere else, and it was neat. It was a neat part of growing up.
I mean, you hung out with a small group of people, and you got to know these people over the course of a year. And I can remember having up at Thunder Road, after the races were over, or for the day, we'd end up with having a softball game or a wiffle ball game or whatever, throw some football, frisbee. Would just always just make it entertaining. It wasn't just racing. It was fun to do other things, that you probably would if that's what you did at a campground or something. So we made it as much of a pleasure as we could.
Oliver's first experience going to a race was in 2014. So we were in California, and we were visiting my wife Heather's family out in California. And it happened to be at the time that the NASCAR race was happening in Fontana. That was his first experience actually going to a race. By then he had already shown interest in it. He had his little cars and he loved to play with them and everything like that. But that day was pretty, I think, important for him and his love for racing going forward. He had a great experience. You know, he knew that I loved racing and I loved to watch it, and it was on TV. So I think, you know, just naturally he kind of liked to spend time watching it with me, and then he got involved with getting the cars and stuff like that. And then, you know, kindergarten graduation is really when we found out his, you know, desire to race. We had his graduation from kindergarten, and part of the graduation was the kids would get up, they'd get their little certificate for graduating kindergarten, but they also had to say what they wanted to be when they grew up. And Oliver said that he wanted to be a race car driver. Yeah, so I let my dad know that, you know, Oliver was going to be racing and that we had got him a cart, and so he had come with us to pick it up and put it in the back of his truck and brought it here to the house. And you know, at that time, I don't think he realized how much involvement he was going to have with this, or probably didn't even realize how serious it was going to be. I would imagine none of us really knew.
Believe it or not, when we first got involved with go-karts with Oliver, I thought, this is, you know, there's not much to this, and boy, was I wrong. There is so much involved with racing go-karts. It's as intense of maintenance and learning how to set up a chassis to what you should do in the course of a race day to make changes, to make the kart better, and it's almost harder with the go-karts, because the smallest thing can make such a difference on how your go-kart handles, because there is no suspension on these. Your suspension is your tires, so air pressure is so critical, but there's no springs. There is nothing, so it's all done with, you know, you get your caster, your camber, just like a regular car. You set your wedge, your toe, all your percentages of your weights, so important. And they're as technical as, you might as well be racing a full-size race car, because it's so intense what you have to do with these go-karts.
Yeah, there's a lot of different things that you can do to adjust the car. Get it tighten this down yet?
No, I did not.
You know, and some of the things, it's just, you know, moving something a quarter of an inch, or changing, you know, where the weight is on the cart by just a little bit, you know, is what makes it go fast. So there's a lot to learn from that respect.
You work all week, and a lot of work to race. It's a tiring sport, you know. When you work all week hard, and then weekends you're still working hard to work on a race car and work on it at the track, and it's hot and tiring, a very tiring sport.
Is that a possible thing?
Okay.
Yeah, so as part of it, you know, wrecks will happen, but there's a lot of safety gear, you know, that Oliver wears to make sure that he's as safe as possible in the cart. You know, one of the things with the cart that he's racing right now is it's got a full cage on it. You know, some of the karting series out there, they have open carts and they don't have a cage, they don't wear seat belts and things like that. And, you know, with Oliver's situation that he's in right now, it's pretty safe. He's got wrist restraints to keep his arms from flying around. He's got the neck protection to make sure his head, you know, stays where it's supposed to if ever there was a crash. But yeah, there's absolutely times where, you know, if he's in a wreck or whatever, you certainly worry. You just want to make sure that he's okay.
It's I don't think I was ever scared, but maybe make you a little wiser, you know, and try to be a little more cautious and things of that nature. But no matter how cautious you are, you can't always predict what's going to happen on a racetrack. One time at Lee USA Speedway, I was running the super modifieds. I ended up climbing the front straightaway wall and going down the whole front straightaway with all four wheels. The left side's on the wall and the right side's up on the fence, and went the whole length of the front straightaway like that. And it was kind of an exciting little moment for everybody. But I can remember I burnt my leg one time. It was up against the shifter. We were racing at Oxford. I don't think it was a 250. It was just one of their open comp races, a 100-lap race, and you know, roughly 2 hours. The shifter was burning on my leg, so that was kind of a nasty burn that I had, because it really kind of cooked my leg. But one time at Beach Ridge, when we were running the American Canadian Tour, early on in the race, just racing for position with, I forget who it was, we were just racing for position, but my right side door panel got pushed in a little bit. The exhaust came out the doors on those are very low, and it bent the exhaust and the inside crush panels just right, so the exhaust was actually coming inside of the car for most of the race. And by the time that race was over, I finished well. If I remember right, I don't even remember where I finished, but I don't think it was all that bad. But it was that was a kind of a bad night too, because they ended up taking me to the hospital for that one too, and because I had such a poisoning of the carbon monoxide that I had to have oxygen pumped in me for several hours to get my blood figured out right. And
the first big crash that he had was in 2018. There was a couple carts in front of him. He was in third place, and the two carts that were racing for the lead got together, and he, you know, hit the two carts that spun in front of him, and then he got hit from behind as well. And you know, that was his first big crash, so you know, there was definitely concern for that, because it was the first time, and you know, you don't really know how he's going to respond to that. He had never been through anything like that before. He handled it well. He was not hurt, but he was concerned about his cart. He was really bummed out because his cart was damaged bad enough that he was out of the race. What I really liked about it was that during the off week, you know, he didn't hesitate. He couldn't wait to get back into the cart, get the cart back together. And you know, at 9 or 10 years old, he jumped right in, and we worked on the cart together to get it fixed back up. So, you know, that showed me that, you know, he handled it well. As far as not being afraid, he was ready to get right back in it.
that's the nature of racing. It's you're on the edge at all times, and if you're not, then you're not going to be competitive at all. So you've got to be able to just kind of put those things behind you, I guess, and you know, just move on. And I've managed to do that, I guess, for the most part. Kind of forget about them. In auto racing, you have more, I think you have more races that you are disappointed with than you are, going home happy being the winner. It's obvious that you just, you go through some times that you can't seem to do anything right. I mean, and I've had seasons like that. I've had several seasons where I just couldn't do anything right. And, it was lack of knowledge and finances and time to do it right. So yeah, it's I would say you have more down times than you do good times.
Yeah, when you're racing, you put everything you have into it. You want to do good at it, so it's very time consuming to get the car good, and you want to race as much as you can to get experience driving. So, I do enjoy racing, and Tom and Scott and Oliver, and now you even being involved with it. It's a good family activity. There's just some things I just would like to get done too, and it's hard to get them done when you've got so much going on. That's the only thing I worry about. We're getting older, and it's harder to get things done. It's harder to get up on a roof and climb a ladder to paint up high on your house. I just wish that could get done before we get much older.
After the American Canadian Tour, we kind of laid back and was just racing here and there. I had purchased a car from Herbie Simpson. Slowing down, I was focusing more on a business that I was trying to get up and running. I was self-employed, and
TQ Auto Body understands how frustrating a damaged car can be. That's why they provide you with a fast, accurate estimate for your insurance company. Can't get to them? No problem. So remember, when you need auto body work, go where the pros go. TQ Auto Body.
kind of pay more attention to that. That grew a little bit more than I anticipated at one point, and I had 8 or 10 guys working for me, so it wasn't easy doing that. So I guess I had to pay more attention to business than go out and just spend money going racing. So I would say that was probably the biggest reason why I was slowing down. But
my dad wasn't racing for a couple of years, and I know he had an opportunity to drive a super modified at one point. I think it was probably 1990 at Star for like one race, and then so I was 9 or 10 years old at the time. I remember he ended up, I'm pretty sure it was a 2-day event. So I think there was qualifying on Saturday, and then Sunday was the feature races. And he had qualified pretty well for the race at Lee in 91. And like I said, he hadn't really raced much there, but he had qualified well. But on the next day, the feature event, I remember he ended up getting caught up in a wreck. It was on the first lap of the race. And I still remember how disappointed I was. I remember like my dad's car getting towed back to the pits, and I remember, because I was only 9 or 10 years old, sitting on the outside of the pit fence, looking down, and I remember crying. I was upset, that probably more so that the race ended so early. I didn't even really get to see him race. But I was excited for him to be having another opportunity to drive. Like I said, he had gone for a while without racing, so to see him back out there again was cool. But then to see it end that early, I remember that disappointment. I remember sitting on that little hill looking down into the pits at Lee Speedway and being in tears, the disappointment.
But it's because Like, just be more aggressive. Like, if you're passive, you're more apt to get caught up in something. You know what I mean? Like, when you're on the inside, if there's going to be a wreck, they're going to go out to the outside. You're going to just go by on the inside more than likely. You know what I mean? So if you got that inside, just dig through and try and get by them, and then all that stuff will happen behind you. Okay? Just don't be so passive like that, you know?
Oh yeah, Tom and Scott are, you know, probably as excited about the racing as Oliver, and it's an exciting hobby for them to do, something to do all together. So that is the good thing about racing, is it is a family sport, that the whole family, even not just the driver on the track, but there's something for all the family to do, whether it work on the cart, tow the cart, sit in the stands and root them on. It is a fun family sport.
Pretty well wind, like you say, had done limited racing for several years, because I was involved with running my business and things like that more than racing, and that's when I was asked to go do a test drive for Keith Larson, who was a friend of mine. He was my crew chief for many years when I was on the American Canadian Tour, and when I was doing pro stock racing and things like that. He was my crew chief, and he was working with a car that was owned by Ronnie Rounds of Down East Auto Body, and they were wanting to see if I could help them out with what was up with their car. They had a very good car that was a very successful car that they had purchased. It was a championship car, and they had some problems with doing well with it. So they asked if I would drive the car and give it a shot and see what I thought, and that was at Star Speedway. And I went out and practiced the car and I thought it went pretty good. I thought it went really well, and then it was showing that the car was capable of running up front. And then from there, I thought my day was done with just helping them out for the day, and Mark Duchesne, the driver of it at that time, decided that nope, why don't you drive it in the feature too? So he had just jumped up to it. He was a rookie in that division. He was doing street stocks before that and did well. So I drove it in the feature, and again, I don't remember the finish, but it just put a whole new spark in the people that, with Ronnie Rounds, and a little bit of excitement with him to see his car doing all right, doing pretty good. And at that time, Mark Duchesne had just made a decision that it was more car than he wanted to be driving. He just felt that that he didn't want to drive a pro stock. So that's where Ronnie was now looking for a driver, and he talked to me and asked if I would want to go drive it some more. So we drove it. I know we went up to Oxford probably the following week, because there was no points or anything like that anybody was chasing. We went up to Oxford Plains Speedway, and they had an open event that we were going to. And I've said earlier that I always enjoyed going up there and racing up there. And
one of his first times driving the 73 car was at the end of '92. He went to Oxford, and it was a big race. He hadn't raced on the American Canadian Tour in 4 years. So they went up there with that car, and again, it was probably his third or fourth drive in that 73 car. He won his heat race and ended up finishing fifth in the 150 lap feature against top competitors from all around. So that was a really good memory, and I actually have a photograph of him crossing the finish line in that heat race, and you can see, the full bleachers behind him crossing the finish line, and you can see me up in the stands out of hundreds of people up like this, and I thought that was a cool picture because you could point me out there, being super excited about him winning that race.
It just kept growing from there. Next thing you know, I'm driving more and more and more for Ron rounds, and then the following year we're putting a team together for me to drive for Down East Auto Bodies. So here we go again, start all over. It's been a while since I've been involved in building a team again, but we rounded up some people, and I figured my career was over and was just kind of winding down and thinking about other things in life, and then to have it come back and the way it did, it was nothing intentional about it. I was just trying to help someone else out, and it just kept building from there. We went to Oxford for the first year, like I said earlier, and then we went down to Lee for 4 years. We just, each year we got better and better, and keeps you more interested in, when you get close to getting to a championship.
Right, Lee Speedway is about probably 40 minutes away from where we were living. So when he raced there, it wasn't too bad, getting there, and still a lot involved during the week working on the car, but it was exciting.
And so, in '95, we, without winning a race in the whole season, at least a feature event, we still were running for points for first place for the championship with Mike Weed, and there was a mathematical chance that we could win a championship without actually winning a feature event, because we were a top running car every week. We completed every lap of every race that we were in that year, so that's where we just gained our points, and we finished well enough in every one of them that gave us a little bit of excitement for a championship. So that's when, as that year was winding down, we're making plans for building a new car, and we made contacts with Distance Racing out of Unity, Maine, which was Stan Reserve. He was a chassis shop that had some very good cars out on the circuit and other places, along with Jeff Taylor worked there, and he was a driver, and he was very successful, and we learned a lot. So we had with them and had them build us a chassis, and over this time we had been building up a team of people that just enjoyed what they were doing, and they really, everybody got excited to build a brand new car. And we put a lot of effort into everything on that, right to every detail of the car that just was second to none. And between having great engines and a new distance racing chassis with a bunch of excited people who were willing to work hard and look for every detail every week. That's how we put this 1996 season together. And the first time I drove that car at Lee on a practice day, I just could not believe how well this car handled. It was incredible. A dream to drive. And so that just gave me a lot of confidence. And so that's pretty much how this all came together. And
here is your leader out of turn 4, Tom Quinney, the 1996 NASCAR Winston Racing Series Pro Stock Champion.
1996 was a very exciting year. A lot of good memories. I would be excited whenever he was on the track, every race, from early on till the end of his career. I would say the excitement was the same. But of course, when you are going close, you know, you might get a championship, I suppose, you know, you would probably a little more excited, but
Definitely. So the 96 season, you know, my dad was always a great driver. He didn't always have top-notch cars to race, top-notch equipment. He had good cars, but never really, you know, that car that could really showcase how good of a driver he was, and that's how I felt. So for that season, you know, there was a lot of excitement because they had a new car, they had a new engine, and you know, they had just come off a season where, I mean, he had finished second in the points and was running well, but it really kind of felt like, you know, this new situation that the team was in with this brand new car, ground up and everything. It was really top-notch stuff. Was kind of going to give him that opportunity to have a great year that season
Quinney up on the
that track.
outside. Quinney makes up for lost ground, puts the hammer down, gains about 3 spots in half a straightaway. Quinney on the move on the outside. Again, Quinney just rocks in that outside groove and takes over the 3rd spot. Hampshire is back to
Ended up winning the first race, the first feature of the year, and went on to win 7 more features that year. And the car just was great. And we ended up winning the championship over Bobby Gahan, which was a tough battle because Bobby was a tough competitor. So yeah, that was a great year.
You know, I'd never really been able to experience seeing him win that frequently. So it was really exciting for me because, like I said, such a big part of my life was that connection with watching my dad race, and you know, being his biggest fan really is how I felt, you know. So to see him have that much success that season was really special and really exciting.
It was really enjoyable to have a car that was as good as it was in '96 to come home with 8 feature wins and multiple heat wins and a championship. So I guess combine all those together, that's really gratifying, and you know, it's a good way to wind down a career, I guess. You know, we got the championship in '96, and we went up to Beech Ridge to run there for a full season. Most of the team did not come with us, so it was different. It just was, and I was feeling that it was just time for me to just retire. And I had done it for so many years that maybe the drive wasn't there or whatever, and we had the car race ready. The only thing it had to do was come off the scale table and be pushed into the trailer and loaded up and head to the races. And I called Ron and wanted to talk with him about it, and told him I just don't want to do this anymore, and I'd rather give you a race car that's race ready to give to whoever else you want to drive it, or whatever you want to do. And that's basically how my career ended. It was time, and it was also time. I mean, you know, it was time for me to really focus on my wife and give back to her. Becky waited a long time for a house, and it was, you know, like I said earlier, we rented, and for all those years, you know, the first 20 years of our marriage, and I wanted to give back to her, and so it was just time. It was time to quit. So.
yeah, when we bought this house, I did give a lot of thought about what I had learned in high school, you know, what I would do with my own home, and put that knowledge to use finally. So I was happy to do that.
Yeah, after that, my dad didn't really pursue driving. after that. But yeah, I mean, it was kind of a bummer and a letdown at the time, just because he had had such a successful season the year before, and then he had gone to Beech Ridge, the new track and everything. He only ran the 4 or 5 races, I think, at the beginning of the year, and he won the first race up there at Beech Ridge. But yeah, it was unexpected, but it's just kind of the way things worked out.
And here we are 20 years later, and we're going racing again with one of my grandchildren. So it's fun.
Last year, so every winter we kind of take the time and we draw up what kind of paint scheme we want to do for Oliver's cart and the graphics design and all that. And I'll usually draw up 3-4 different kind of designs, and then I'll show them to him, and he'll tell me what he likes the best, and then we'll talk about what little changes and stuff like that. And we've done that ever since he started racing. Last year, for the 2020 season, we were doing that over the winter, and he had told me at that time, he said, Dad, I think next year I want to do a paint job like Papa's last car, the one that he won the championship with. And it was completely his idea, and he said, because it'll be 25 years that he won his championship. And I said, well, that's a really cool idea. And so, when the season ended, then we kind of went to work on, how we make that go-kart, resemble what does Papa's championship race car look like. So we drew up a few designs there, and got the graphic scheme over to Justin, who does our graphics for us, and he brought it to life. We actually involved Down East Auto Body, who used to own Papa's car, that last car that he drove, and they helped us match up the right color blue for the paint, and they painted it for us, and really kind of brought it to life. Really kind of do a tribute to it, and that's what we wanted to do. So Papa didn't know we were doing that, but he was surprised when we were able to reveal it to him.
But Oliver adopted in recognition of 25th anniversary of my winning a championship, Oliver wanted to surprise me with using the paint scheme. They recreated the paint colors, because that was the paint color that we had made up our own, and the blue.
When he first started racing, before his first race, we were having dinner and talking about him getting ready for his first race, and we had just gotten his cart and his first cart, and we were talking about what number do you want to be, and he didn't hesitate. He said he wanted to be number 73 like Papa. So I thought that was pretty special that at 7 years old, that's instantly where his mind went. Like, if I'm gonna race with the number that Papa had last. So, yeah.
There's a certain part of me that would like to still race. For me, I think those days are gone. And it's. I don't really think about it a whole lot, but I try to give Oliver pointers from my experiences on what to do and what he should do, but you know, it's exciting to watch. You know, it was always fun.
Up on top of the side of my car and hit my elbow or something, and then everyone else fell in, so.
How good was the car today?
Pretty good. I'd say it's pretty good.
Who do you want to thank for the win?
Everyone who's here today, and I want to thank my dad, my papa, for helping me out so much each and every race.
Congrats on the win.
Thank you.
Nice job.